Evening. Hope all of you are doing well. Glad to see you guys in person yet again. I just wanted to give a lay of the land for the next couple of days because these blot are a little funny sized. Here's how it's going to work. Today we're going to learn one blot. Nun Gimel is a very large blot, as you can see. On Shabbos, we're also going to learn one blot, which means we're going to be a blot behind. But we're going to learn Nun Hey and Nun Vav on Sunday night. But if you look at Nun Vav Amud Aleph, it's only 2 lines. So we'll be able to make up some lost ground there. Basically, that's how it's going to work out. This coming Thursday, in 1 week, I will not be here for Daf Yomi, and I will not be available to do it live. I'll pre-record and post. I've already worked out how the blot will work out. It'll be a little bit of a funny layout, just like this coming days, because the blot are just a funny size.
Graduation.
Next Thursday? Oh, graduation. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. All right, we'll do what we can. I don't have any graduations but either way, I'm going to be on an airplane from Las Vegas, Mir Hashem. So
they had the baby?
They had the baby. Okay, we're on the top line of Nun Gimel Amud Aleph, and we are continuing sugyas in regards to the Beis Hamikdash and the Ktoros L'fnei V'Lifnim. As we learned about yesterday, the Ktoros was brought by the Kohen Gadol. He would walk through the southern side of the first curtain and walk all the way up to the northern side of the second curtain of the inner curtain, and then go down in between the badim. And we said that he'd put it right there and do the Torah. So now let's learn some ancillary dinim. Let's get started. Tanu Rabbanon. The rabbis taught us in a brisa. The pasuk reads, "V'nasanes haktorah al ha'esh lifnei Hashem." So what does that mean? What do we learn from here? Says the Gemara, and remember the history here. This is a brisa, right? This is in the times of the Tanaim. What were they telling us? Shelo yitaken mibachutz v'yachnis, that the Kohen Gadol should know that he should not put the Torah on top of the gacheles, on top of the cold, outside of the heichal, the yachnis, and then go in. Why? Because that's what the tzdukim did. The tzdukim misunderstood the pasuk. We saw this Gemara already once in Maseches Yoma. Third line, the hotzi miliban shel tzdukim she'omrim yitaken mibachutz v'yachnis. They said the opposite. They said that you dafka should be adding the Torah to the gachelos on while you're standing outside the heichal, and then go in. My darush, what pasuk did they read? Says the pasuk. What was the pasuk that they misread? I should say. So the Gemara answers, Ki be'anan ero'el kaporas, because it should be in a cloud when I see the kaporas. Namely, it should be a cloud before I walk in. That's how they learn pshat in the pasuk. We're 6 lines down in Gimel Amud Aleph. So in the brisa, Amru lahem chachamim, the chachamim retort back to the tzdukim who learned that pasuk incorrectly. Hang on 1 second. You're making a drush on the pasuk one way. We already had a pasuk that explicitly spoke about this. We already had a pasuk that speaks about this. So what are you talking about the drush of ki ben kaporas? Says the Gemara, how did the Chachamim if what the Chachamim are telling us is that the pasuk of Hashem teaches us that the Ktoras can only be put on the gachalos, on the coals, once they're in the heichal. So then what does the pasuk mean? Answers the Gemara, Ma'ale ashan is an herb. It's a special type of leaf that generated a very targeted type of smoke. It made the smoke go straight up in a stack form in the Beis Hamikdash. And we're going to be spending the next many lines discussing the Ma'ale Ashan. Uminayin shenosin ba Ma'ale Ashan. How do you know that you're supposed to put Ma'ale Ashan on in the first place? Shene'emar, because the pasuk reads V'chisa anan haktoras es hakaporas, because the Ktoros is supposed to generate a cloud that fills up the entire heichal. In fact, that's the halachic parameter for when the Kohen Gadol can leave the Kodesh HaKodashim. When the Kodesh HaKodashim becomes filled with smoke, then he can leave. So we need the Ma'ale Ashan for that. Halo nasan ba Ma'ale Ashan, if you were to not have put on the Ma'ale Ashan. Or again, one of the two. If you're missing the Ma'ale Ashan, or if you're missing one of the key ingredients of the Ktoros, so the halacha is you'd be chayiv misa. The Kohen Gadol would be chayiv misa. Says the Gemara, this Isser of Chiyuv Misa, you have a different problem. You have a different problem. The Bia Rekanis, you're entering into the Heichal when you're not allowed to. The halacha is that the Kohen Gadol is only allowed to enter into the Ketores under specific circumstances. He must make sure that he has the Ketores with all of its appropriate ingredients. And to enter into the Kodesh HaKodashim without those specific ingredients, you'd be Chayiv Misa. So therefore, says the Gemara, what are you talking about your Chayiv Misa for forgetting one of the Simanim on the Haktara? Forget that. The Bia is also a problem. You're not allowed to enter into the room. So Amar of Sheshes, we need to be very clear here. There are 2 different major halachic issues going on right now. Number 1, performing the Haktara without all the ingredients is an Isser D'Oraisa. Number 2, simply entering into the Kodesh HaKodashim without all of the ingredients is a separate Isser D'Oraisa, 2 Isserim. What are we talking about here in this case when we say all of these psukim with the 2 Isserim? One is Behaktara, where you do the Haktara without the right ingredients, and one is the Bia Reikanis, going into the Kodesh HaKodashim without the right ingredients. So one is the Haktara, one is the Bia Reikanis. Says the Gemara, Kigon, we're about 12 lines down. Kigon Sheshagag B'Bia. He wasn't aware when he walked in, the Bia, entering into the room. He wasn't aware that he was missing one of the ingredients. However, the Hazid Behaktara, that's why he's Chayv Misa. He wasn't Chayv Misa on the entering into the room, because when he entered into the room, he did so b'tnai that he thought it was all good, everything's wonderful, great. So then he walked in thinking that he had all the right materials. He was wrong, but that's a shogeg. You're not going to be Chayv Misa on the shogeg. You're going to be Chayv Misa on the actual Haktara because you're missing one of the ingredients. Oh, so Rav Ashi said, that was one answer that he says. Rav Ashi gives another answer. We're about 14, 15 lines down on Nun Gimel Amud Aleph. Rav Ashi Amar, what Isser are you talking about when you walk into the Kodesh HaKodashim? Afilu tema hazid bizu bizu. He would say, we can even have a case where you're Chayav Misa, when you've doubly done something wrong. Number 1, bizu, you walked in, via Rekanis, you walked into the Kodesh HaKodashim without all the ingredients. And number 2, you performed the Haktara, you performed the Ktores without all the ingredients, 2 separate Isurim. But if that's true, then what's with the Chiyuv Misa? You should have 2 Chiyuv here. Kigon, the ayil shtei haktaros achas shlema v'achas chasera. So he walks into the base and into the Kodesh HaKodashim with 2 different collections of Torahs. One is made perfectly, achas shlema, v'achas chasera. One is missing an ingredient. So Abia, walking into the Kodesh HaKodashim, you're not going to be chayiv, lo mechayiv, because even though one of the things that you brought in, one of your collections of Torahs was incomplete, but you brought in one that was made properly. So it's not that you can't bring in one that's chaser, it's that you can't enter without one that's full. So he was hazid vizu. He knew that one of them was missing, but one of his collections of Torahs was perfect. So there was no Isser, there was no Chiyuv D'Oraisa there. So therefore, this is how we come up with a scenario. This is the second approach. We saw the answer of Rav Sheshes, that really the entering into the room was a shogeg, the Haktara was amazing. Here we're saying they're both amazing, but it's only one Chiyuv Misa, which is the Haktara of the Ktoras Chasera. So now we're going to analyze this a little bit more. We just spoke about the Ma'ale Ashan. The Ma'ale Ashan was this special herb that helped the smoke of the Ktoras go straight up, like a plume, straight up into the ceiling. We'll see some details about this later. Amar Mar, a third of the way down in Gimel Amud Aleph, 5 lines before the wide lines. Let's quote back a line that we saw a few lines ago. So this brisa, we said, it says Vikisa. So it says the Gemara, very unique language. This is, I think, the first time in Shas we've seen this. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi's about 8 or 10 lines more, about 10, 12 lines above where we are. Rashi, we already have a pasuk that talks about this, ki be'anan, that it should be in a cloud. Now this brisa says v'chisa. You have 2 psukim saying the same exact thing. 6 answers. Answer number 1. Amar Rav Yosef Hachi Kamar. This is pshat in the brisa. Ein li ela alei ma'ale ashan. I only know you're allowed to bring the leaf of the Ma'ale Ashan. Iker Ma'ale Ashan minayin. How about the root? How about the stalks? Can I throw that in the fire? Does that work? Talmud Lomar Rikisa. So we have 2 psukim. One pasuk was being matir, the aleh. The other pasuk is going to be matir, the stalk, the Iker. Oh, that's answer number 1. Answer number 2, 3 lines before the wide lines in Gimel Amud Aleph. Amar le Abayi v'ha'ipchatanya. No, it wasn't the leaf that was the obvious. It was the ikr, the root, that was the obvious. The Brisa says, not like you, Rav Yosef. What does the Brisa say? The Brisa says, the Tanya, Nathan ba ikr ma'ale ashan. Hayemetamer, when they put in the ikr, that was the ma'ale ashan that we should put in, is the ikr, the root. And when they would do that, hayemetamer ve'ole kemakel. The fire, the smoke would go straight up like a staff. Ad shemagia lishmei korah, until it would get to the ceiling of the Kodesh HaKodashim. Kevan shegia lishmei korah, and once that smokestack, the straight up smokestack, like a stick, would get to the ceiling, memashmesh v'yored b'ksalim, it would spread out and then it would come down the walls. So Rabbi Yosef, how can you say that the leaf was the obvious one? This brisa says the leaf wasn't obvious, the ikr, the root was the obvious one. And therefore, answer number 2 is, Elamar Abaye, Hachi Kamar. This is pshat in the brisa. Ainli Ella. Why is it that we have 2 psukim? Ainli Ella ikr mala ashan. One pasuk is going to tell me the quote unquote obvious, that the root should be used for the mala ashan, to help the smoke go straight up in a stack. Ale, what about the leaves mala ashan? Minayin, how do you know that's allowed? Talmud lomar vikisa. Oh, so we have 2 psukim, one different versions of the same idea. Answer number 3, 3 lines into the wide lines, halfway down. Rav Sheshas Amar, Ainli Ella, you guys are talking about you're too much into the weeds. Is it this type of part of the leaf, that part of the leaf? You guys are totally off base. So Rav Shesha takes us in a whole new direction. Rav Shesha says, why do we have 2 psukim? Because we're talking about 2 different types of sanctity. We're talking about the Mishkan, and we're also talking about Shiloh and the Beis HaMikdash. Let's see how the Gemara plays this out. Rav Chizda Amar, Eini Ela Ohel Moed Shebe Midbar. I only know that the Mala Ashan can be used in the Midbar. Shiloh u Beis Olamim Minayim. We've seen the phrase Beis Olamim now twice in this Masechta. Beis Olamim is a reference to the Beis HaMikdash. We know that you're allowed to use Mala Ashan in the Midbar. How about Shiloh and Beis Olamim? Talmud lomar v'kisa. Oh, that's the use of the second pasuk. It wasn't about the leaf or the stalk. Throw the whole thing in as far as Rav Sheshes is concerned. He just has to figure out how the 2 psukim are used. Pasuk number 1 is going to be used for the Mishkan. Pasuk number 2 is going to be for Shiloh and Beis Olamim. That's what he says. So it says the Gemara, hi, hold on one second. No, you can't learn that from Vikisa. We already know that Shiloh and Beis Olamim should include this. Hi, mi v'chein ye'aseh le'ohel moed hashocheni tam nafka. We already learned that out. So there's no reason to have an extra pasuk to include Shiloh and Beis Olamim. Everything that happened in the Midbar should be happening over here in Shiloh and in the Beis Olamim. Ella, here's our 4th answer. Says the Gemara, we're 5 lines into the white lines. Ella hachi kamar. This is pshat. Einli ella b'yom kippurim. I know that only on Yom Kippur can I use Ma'ale Ashan. So this answer is accepted. So far, answers 2 and 4 have been accepted. Answer number 2 is that the ikr is one pasuk and the aleh, the leaf, is another pasuk. And answer numbers 1 and 3 were rejected. Answer 4 that we just said is that we know that the obvious is going to be Yom Kippur. How do we know B'shari Mos Hashana Tamal Rakisa? Good. Answer number 5, 6 lines into the wide lines. Rav Ashi Amar Chad le mitzvah v'chad le akev. Wow. So this is rare. It's rare to have a mitzvah that you have to do, and it's le'ikuva on something secondary. It's very rare. So you have a mitzvah to put in the Ma'ale Ashan, and it's le'ikuva. That's very strange, very unique scenario in halacha, very uncommon. So that's what the Gemara says here in the name of Rav Ashi, and that's our 3rd genre of halacha. First was it the parts of the Aleh Ashan. The second was location in the Midbar and in Shiloh. The third model answer we have is mitzvah and la'akev. And Rava takes us still further. Rav Amar chad la'onesh v'chad la'azhara. This is a very important idea in Shas. We're going to get into this in the Bavas and in other parts of Shas as well. Whenever the Torah has an Isser Daraisa, there's always the Isser Lav, and there's always an Azhara to warn you about that Isser Lav. Only then, if the Torah indicates an Azhara and the Onesh, that's when you can have an Onesh. Ditanya, this is a mistake in the Gemara. Ditanya, the Gersos and the newer Masechtas and the newer Shasas correct this. Ditanya, Rav Elazar Omer, Velo Yamusu. What does it mean, Velo Yamusu? That pasuk means that's the Onesh. What does it mean, Ki be'anane re'eh? That's the Azhara. So to teach you that you're really doing something very wrong by not taking care of these things, of making sure that it's not brought the right way. One is for the Onesh, one is for the Azhara. Yachol, and then a historical part. When were these psukim written? Were they written before Aaron's children were killed? Or were they written after? Yachol, Yushneim, both of these psukim, Amurim, Kodem, Misas, Bnei Aaron. Maybe both of these psukim were written before Bnei Aaron. That can't be. Talmud Lomar, Acharei Mos, Shnei Bnei Aaron. That can't be that these 2 things were listed after their deaths. And maybe Yachol, Yehu Shneim Amurim, Achar, Misas, Shnei Bnei Aaron. Maybe they were both listed afterwards. Talmud Lomar, no. Ki be'anan e ra'eh, I will see in the future, ala kaporos. They hadn't done the Yisr yet. So the Gemara is very unclear. I mean, it's a question. So the Gemara's question is, when were these 2 psukim said? So it says the Gemara, HaKetzad, Azhara Kodem Misa. The Azhara, the warning for the Isser that they performed was before their Misa, before the sons died. The Onesh Achar Misa. So it says the Gemara, my Talmud, where do we learn this out from? Where did you get this from? So it says the Gemara, it's Pashup Pshat in the words. Amar Rava, Amar Kra, we're 3/4 of the way down, about 15 lines up. Amar Rava, Amar Kra, Ki be'anane ra'eh. In the cloud, I will see. Ve'adayin lo nireh. I haven't seen it yet. It's a future language. You're in the past. You're in the present saying, in the future, I will generate a cloud. So therefore we know that one thing was said before and one thing was said after. But if that's true, it generates a domino effect, Shiloh, which is if the Azhara was before they died and the Onesh pasuk was after they died, why were they killed? You're missing one of the fundamental features of the Onesh, which is the Azhara is lacking. You can't split them like that. After they're killed. By the way, new pasuk, that doesn't work, says the Gemara. My time at they shouldn't have been killed. We need both features. Everyone needs to know exactly what's going on. Azhara followed by Onesh, says the Gemara. Kiditanya, don't think that they're getting killed for what you think they're getting killed. This is a very important brisa. The brisa writes, Rabbi Lazar Omer, Lo mesu b'nei Aaron ela shahoru halacha bifnei Moshe Rabban. They didn't do anything wrong in mechanics. They did everything right, but they were hore halacha bifnei Rabban, and that's aser. My dorish. Where do we learn this from? The pasuk says, "V'nasnu be'Aaron hakohen eish al mizbeach." That's what the Torah says, that the bnei Aaron should put fire on the mizbeach. And what was the drasha of the children of Aaron? And the Meforshim write, they were correct, but they didn't ask rishus from Moshe Rabbeinu, and they were killed for it. Unbelievable sensitivity, a dakos in halacha, that they should have asked Moshe Rabbeinu, and they did not. That brings us to the 2 dots, 12 lines from the bottom of the page. We had said in our Mishnah, Yatsa uvalo derech knisasa. We said that after, in our previous Mishnah, we detailed, remember the picture we saw last night, how they walked around the first Parol Cheser, on the second one, and then he stood by the Aron. And then we said that he backed out the same way. What I didn't say last night is he walked backwards, which is exactly what happens. It says the Gemara, Minani Mili. How do we know that they actually walked backwards? Where do we see a precedent for this in halacha? We're going to get into a very halachic Gemara about leaving the presence of a Rav, leaving the presence of the Shechina, v'chule. Immediately says the Gemara, how do we know that he should walk backwards? Amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmeni, Amar Rav Yochanan, Amar Kra. He went to the Bama in Givon. Before the Mikdash was built, there was a time that we were allowed to bring Korbanos on a Bama. Not allowed now, not allowed for most of our history, but there were times that we could bring a Korban on a Bama. But says the Gemara, why did the Pasuk add in the word Yerushalayim? They're not near each other, they're totally different cities. So the Gemara, the Gemara is going to compare the exit from Givon after the Korban to Yerushalayim, Libi also Yerushalayim with Givon, to the way that they entered from Yerushalayim to Givon. What's the comparison? The comparison is Mavi also Yerushalayim to Givon. When they were going toward Givon, Pon of Klape Bama Kederach Biyasa. Obviously, you were facing the Bama. That was appropriate. That was the Makom Kadosh. That's what you were trying to do. So what's the back end of this? Therefore, just like when you went to Givon to bring a Korban on the Bama, so too says the Gemara, Af Yitziyasam Givon Yerushalayim, Pon of Klape Bama Kederach Biyasa. He would walk backwards. They walked backwards away from Givon to make sure that they were still facing forward to the Bama. That was considered a way that was respectful. Therefore, in our Mishnah that we previously learned, why did the Kohen Gadol walk backwards? Dvarim pshutim. If by the Bama you had to walk backwards when you left Givon from bringing a Korban, if you're going to do it there, Allah has kama v'kama pi elef. It's the Beis HaMikdash mamish. Especially Beis HaMikdash Rishon, where there was an Aron standing right there. The Shechina was Shora Ben Akruvim. Of course you should walk backwards. Obviously that's true. So says the Gemara, that's the drasha. And then the Gemara adds in a couple of very important phrases. V'chein kohanim ba'avodasan, ulebiyim b'dufanan, v'Yisrael b'ma'amadan. In all cases, k'shahayu niftarin, lohayu mechazrin penei b'hochan, el mitzadedin penei b'hochan, they would keep their face facing that which was their avoda, and then they would walk back. We do this. You see sometimes people do this after when they walk out of a Beis HaMedrash. That's appropriate behavior as well. Though interestingly, this Gemara is going to detail a lot of things. It doesn't seem to say that, although the Beis HaMikdash is a Mikdash Ma'at, so maybe we should assume that that's the case, but the Gemara is not explicit here. What is explicit? Let's say you go and ask a shayla from a Rav. You walk away backwards. How far? Let's see what the scope of this is in the Gemara. 5 lines from the bottom. Kihad Rebbe Lazar. Had have a miftar mined Rav Yochanan. Rebbe Lazar, when he would leave Rav Yochanan, let's see what the details are. Can have a boy Rav Yochanan the skuye. When Rav Yochanan, who was the Rebbe, would leave, have a gachin kai Rebbe Lazar aduchte. Rebbe Lazar would bow, and he would keep that bowing position in his place. Ad have a michse Rav Yochanan mineh, to the point that that Rav Yochanan was literally covered. Michse. It just means until he couldn't see him anymore. So he would walk this way backwards, just kind of keep his head down, while his Rebbe would leave the room until he couldn't see him anymore. And Vikat Havaboy Rebbe Lazar Liskuye, and when Rebbe Lazar the Talmud was leaving his Rebbe, he would walk backwards until he couldn't see his Rebbe anymore. Rava, another story. Rava is a couple generations later in the Amorim. Rabbi Yochanan was pretty early, first, second generation, and Rava was a fourth generation Amora. Rav, kind of a miftar minid Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef was a third generation. Remember that Rabbi Yosef was blind. Important part of the story. Rabbi Yosef was blind, as we know. So when Rava, who was a fourth century Amora, would leave his Rebbe, he would walk backwards. Askupta de Rav Yosef Dama. He would walk backwards and he would keep tripping on thresholds throughout the house until there was Dama, until there was literally his feet were bleeding. He was walking backwards in kavod to show. Rav Yosef was blind; he didn't even know. That's how far he went. So it says in the Gemara, top of Gimel Amid Beis, Amru Leila Rav Yosef, Hachi Avid Rava. This is how amazing Rav. Look at the kavod Rabbanan, the kavod Torah that Rava has. When Rav Yosef heard this, he already said. What he said came true. Amar Le, Yehei Rava Kadosh Baruch Hu, it should be your will. Tarum Reishcha Akula Kracha. Your head should be raised above the whole city. Namely, you should become the Rosh Yeshiva. If you have such a kavod Torah, not for Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef was fine; he didn't need the respect of Rava. But the kavod Torah of Rava was so geshmak, so he gave him this bracha b'kachava. Amar Rav Alexandri, Amar Rav Yeshua ben Levi, Hamispalel Tzarch She'avsia. Shalosh psios la'achorav ve'achar kach yitain shalom. Famous halachic Gemara that after we finish davening, we're supposed to take 3 steps back, and we'll see more details. I'll show the details as we go along. We take 3 steps back, and only that do we do the shalom. I'm going to start the wrong direction to the right, which we know is not the case. We do it to the left. We're going to see the iterations of this in the Gemara. So first, you take your 3 steps back. Unlike people who sometimes do this. As they're walking, incorrect. Not what the Gemara says. We do that when we're in a rush. I do that when I'm in a rush. It's not right. It's against this Gemara. First, and then Amar le Rav Mordechai. Kevan shepasa shalosh psias achorav hasam ibaya le lemekam. He also has to stay in that spot. So we know, of course, that we don't rush away afterwards. We're supposed to stay there. We go backwards. We say, "Oh, Seshel Mimramav," and we stand in place at least for the Hiluch Dalet Amos of the poskim, right? We should stay there for at least the amount of time it takes to walk Dalet Amos, 6 feet, a few seconds, a mensch, just to sit. And then the Gemara gives a very strange mashal for this. It says the Gemara 5-6 lines down, mashal l'talmid niftar me rabo. When a Talmud backs away from his Rebbe, im chozer la'altar, if he comes right back in, just rushing back in, it's not kavod. He said, domer lekelev sheshav el keo. It's like a dog who throws up, backs up a little bit, and comes back to the throw. A little bit of a strong mushal. What exactly is going on with the mushal? Okay, fine, whatever it is, it's not a good idea. Tanya Namihaki, the Brisa supports this first of the middle width lines of a very long page. Hamitzpal Tzarch Sheyivsa Shalosh Psios Lachorov, the Brisa supports what we saw in the name of Rav Alexandri. Take 3 steps back. V'achar kach yitain shalom. V'imlo asakain, check this out. Roi lo shelo yispala. You're better off not davening. That's not a halachic Gemara. It's not halachic. It's a hashkafa Gemara. You need to make sure that you are going to be niftar lifnei hamelech properly. And if you're going to walk away rushing out, it's not a geshmak tefillah. That means you're rushing. That means that's not the right tone that you're trying to create. If you're having a really important conversation, lifnei melech malchei melchim, it's not nice to be niftar lifnei hamelech without an appropriate departure. Umishum shemaya amru shenosein shalom liyamin ve'achar kach lesmol. He says that you should be nosein shalom, that when we say osa shalom bimroma, that's nosein shalom, it should be first to the right and then to the left. Shneamar mimino eish das lamo, from the pasuk that we read in Bezos HaBracha. We've read it all hundreds of times. And then the Brisa adds in V'omer. Our brain should be primed already. My V'omer. So it says another pasuk as well. Yipol mitzidcha elef. From your side, you pull me elef urvava miminecha, and 10,000 on your right hand. My V'omer. Why does the Brisa quote 2 psukim for the same idea about the right hand being more chashuv? Says the Gemara. If you would have thought it's just orcha da'ara, no, it's polite. You're supposed to. We were just at a restaurant yesterday, mamish. I was at a restaurant yesterday, and the waiter brought drinks to the table, and he said, "Which one is for the lady? Which one is for your wife?" So I said that one. It was an inconvenient reach. He had to reach around one drink. That's appropriate behavior. It's orach ara. It's nice. It's nice. It's the right behavior. But this is bigger than just being nice, because says the Gemara, it's just nice to do it that way. No, it's much more effective to do it that way. It's 10 times more powerful. Elef in one hand and a revava in the other. The right hand is way more powerful. Rava, and this is where we get into a halachic piece, because the way the Gemara was phrased so far is that it seems that we should bow to the right first. That's where our Nesina Shalom should be, to the right first. So it says the Gemara, Rava Chazi Abaye. Rava was in the same base medrash as Abaye, and he saw the Yahib Shalama Liyamina Beresha. He saw that he gave Shalom, that he said Osa Shalom Imroma after his 3 steps back. So here's what he saw Abaye do: 3 steps back, 1, 2, 3, and then Abaye went to the right. So right away, Rava says, what are you talking about? When he said it was the right for Nesila, he wasn't talking about your right. It's not about you, the person dominating. No. Small didach. I mean, your left to have a yamino shalakadosh baruch hu, and that's taka what we do. And here's halachically what we do: 3 steps back, and once we're 3 steps back, we lean to the left, osa shalom ramav, and then all the way to the right, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, and then the al-kol yisrael remain, head down the whole time. You're bowing during all 3, and then you can put your head all the way up. Kaddish too, same exact idea. But then says the Gemara, one other piece here that we did not yet see. Amar Rav Chia Bered Rav Huna, Chazina Lehul Abaye Virava. But Abaye and Rava had the same thing. That when they took their 3 steps back, they were Bikriya. So I've been giving the examples as the Gemara listed them. I was standing up straight. Not correct. So when we're done with our Shemona Esrei, we lower our head. We take 3 steps back. 1, 2, 3, and then to the left. Kodesh Baruch Hu is right. Head down. To the right, and then the middle. And then you can pick your head. And that is the appropriate quoted in Shulchan Aruch this way. Very halacha l'maisa and very important Gemara. And don't lose out on the hashkafa. It might not even be kedai to daven without having done this, because it shows a kavod. It shows that you're doing something of tremendous importance. If you're niftar b'kavod, when you leave a Kadosh Baruch Hu's presence, you're in a private conversation with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So that's a sign of a relationship. It's a sign of being respectful. We're about a quarter of the way down at the 2 dots. We saw in the Mishnah. We saw in our Mishnah that when the Kohen Gadol finishes what he's doing, lifnai v'lifnim, he goes out of the Kodesh HaKadosh and back into the Heichal. And in that space, he has a tefillah, but it's a tefillah k'tzara. My matzale, what is his tefillah? Says the Gemara, Rava bar Ravada v'Ravin bar Rav Ada tarvai mishmei de Rav. Both of them sang in the name of Rav. They said, Amrei, what is it? They all said, what is his prayer? It should be a year of rain and a year of heat. So the Gemara flips this to shchuna ugshuma, but it's the same content. The Meforshim, I should say that. And then says the Gemara, Shchuna, when it's boiling hot out, Ma'al Yusahi, that's such a Gevaldic thing. Very hot means very dry. It absorbs all the water, and then it's not good for the crops. Says the Gemara, Ela'ema, really what it means is, Im Shchuna, if it's a year that's very moist, then, if it's a year that's very hot, then Teheg Gshuma. This is why the Gemara, one line up, flipped the language around, because it plays nicer with the Shchuna Gshuma. That's exactly how he explained it. So that's what one part of his prayer. We should not lose the leaders of Beis Yehuda, namely the Reish Galusa, those who were kind of the governmental leaders, the people who were liaising between the Jewish community and the world around us. So that person should keep their post. Jews should not need to be supported by one another. And you should not allow the prayers of travelers to pierce the armor and to be heard by you. Why? Look at Rashi. Rashi says about 3 inches above where we are, a third of the way down in the Rashi's Dibur Hamaskel Ovre Drachim. Because they were traveling, they didn't want to get wet. The Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur in the Heichal was davening, please don't let the travelers, like you're getting on a plane, you're like, please don't let it rain. It's not about you. It's about the crops. It was an agricultural world that we lived in. And you're davening as a regular Joe. But that regular Joe tefillah is very powerful. Ad kedei kach that the Kohen Gadol was davening in the Heichal to say you can't do that. It's not a good tefillah. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa when he would travel, says the Gemara, Shada Mitra Ale, it started raining on him. Omar, Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. So we know miracles were done for Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. He turned vinegar into oil. He was a next level Jew. On a whole new plane from what we're used to. Omar, he said to Kodesh Baruch Hu, Shalom, Kol Olam Kula Benachas. Everyone's sitting there just fine in the rain. V'Chanina Bitzar, I'm uncomfortable. What happened? And Kodesh Baruch Hu said, okay, Pasak Mitra. Sure, it was a switch. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa's tefillas were so powerful and so piercing. It was just a switch and everything turned off, done. Then Kiyasa Lebesim, when he got to his house, then he's like, you turned off the rain because I asked you to, but everyone else needs the rain. The Gemara said, the Meforshim said he didn't have any fields. All of a sudden, the switch turned on. Asa Mitra started raining. Amar Rav Yosef, my ahanya leis the Kohen Gadol legab Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. I don't care who the Kohen Gadol is. Your davening is not going to undo the tefillas of Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. But nevertheless, according to some, this was the prayer that he said. Tana Rabbanan, there was a story that actually took place where this rule was broken. Halfway down, Nun Gimel Amud Beis, going to 3 lines to the bottom of the page. Tana Rabbanan, the Gemara says in a brisa, so he broke the Mishnah's rule. The Mishnah said, daven fast. Here we daven lengthy. Then they appointed a couple of kohanim to go in and find out if he was still alive. And as they were walking in, then the Kohen Gadol started walking out. They said to him, you got us all concerned. Why were you davening so long? Amar lehem, he says rhetorically, what more do you want from me? I'm davening that you should have kapara. I'm davening the Beis HaMikdash should be standing. What are you complaining about? Amrulo, alti ragilastos came. Don't do that. You terrified us. Our Mishnah says, Lo haya marach betulas u'kedeshilo lahavi says Yisrael. You're making us frightened. Please don't. We all thought you died and lost all of our kapara. You're worried about one tefillah. Your Torah is much more important to us than your one tefillah. We want you to daven for us, but keep it kotzar, keep it short. Beautiful. Says Gemara 2/3 of the new Mishnah. Mishenital Aron, from the time that the Aron was removed, between the first and second Beis HaMikdash, as we learned. This language is different. We saw Mishenignaz. The Gemara is going to pick up on that language. We saw Yoshiyahu was Nignaz. He was Gonez, the Aron. We'll see here that there's a diuk from this language in the Gemara. Evan, so once the Aron was moved, underneath the Aron was Evan Chaisa Sham, most Nevi'im Harishon. We know that there was a stone there. The Shisia Haisa Nikres. In the name of it was the Shatia, the Evan Shatia, as we know. The Aron was put on top of this protruding rock, and it protruded approximately 3 etzbos, not that much. 1.5 inches, whatever it is not. It's 2 inches, nothing. It's a very small amount. Fine. That's part 1 of the Mishnah. Part 2. Natal etz hadam mimishahayim emarisbo. We mentioned earlier in the Mishnah that there was someone who was holding the blood of the par, and he was stirring it so that the blood would not congeal. Blood congeals rather quickly. Nichnas l'makom shenichnas ve'amad b'makom she'amad. Famous. These words were made famous by Yishai Ribo in one of his songs. In case you're familiar. So when I was reading this Gemara, I instantly started singing when I was on the airplane all by myself. Namely, he went back into the Kodesh HaKodashim, the same pattern, below the outside paroches, above the inside paroches, back to where he did the Ketores. And then what did he do? And then this is going to ring a bell from davening on Yom Kippur. 1 sprinkle up and then 7 below. We'll see in the Gemara what exactly this means. Rashi is going to give us a little bit of an insight. It wasn't like throwing one as high as he could and the rest as low as he could. It was kimatzlef. What does kimatzlef mean? Rashi's a little bit more than halfway down, and the Rashi's dibur hamaschil el kimatzlef. Rashi says bishura zu tachazu. It was in a line. It was in a line, in a vertical line. Kol shmon hazos kimatzlef lo yadati lashona. The word is unique, but he was saying it was. You threw one, and then you throw each one a little bit lower than the other. That's what it means. We'll see this in the Gemara, not today, but in Yirtzeh Hashem in the coming days. The kachayamona achas. This is how we count achas. Achas ve'achas, right? We're familiar with all the language here. Achas v'shtayim achas v'shalosh achas v'arba achas v'chamesh achas v'sheish achas v'sheva. So after he sprinkled the blood of the par, then yatsa, he left v'hinicho al kan hazahav shebehechal. He left the jar, the jug of the blood of the par on a particular golden table. Then, they brought in the shiur Lashem. Remember the shiur Lashem? We spoke about this a couple of weeks ago already, 10 days ago, whenever it was. Then, Shachto, he did shchita b'kibel b'mizrak estam. He collected the blood, the Kabbalah Saddam for this animal. He collected for the shiur in a jar. And then, nichnas l'makom shenichnas l'makom shama. Then he brings it all the way back into the Kodesh HaKodashim, exactly the same exact place where he did the Ketores and where he's already done the sprinkling for the par. Then, he did the same exact sprinkling. The Gemara starts to shorthand itself. The kachayamone, achas ve'achas, achas ve'achas, achas v'shtayim v'chulei. And then, yatsa v'nichlu al kan zahav hasheni shebehechal. Then he says he went out of the Kodesh HaKodashim into the Heichal, and there was a second golden table there. So we have one golden table that has the blood of the par. And this new second golden table, now it's going to have the blood of the seir. Says the Gemara, nope, there were not 2 tables, there was only one. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, lo hayasham elakan echad bilvat. Machlokes and Tanaim. How many golden tables there were in the Heichal for him to put the blood down? Anyways, next, natal dam hapar v'heniach dam hasair. He's a mimenu ala paroches shekeneged ha'aron mibachutz. Then he would sprinkle it on the paroches. Same count. Achas lamala v'sheva lamata. V'lo miskaven. He wasn't trying to get it on the paroches as much as it wanted to do that vertical line of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Very good. The Kachayamona, the Mishnah doesn't even detail it anymore. We're on the first of the very long lines from Gimel Amud Beis. And the Mishnah continues. Natal dam ha'seir v'hiniach dam hapar. Then he would pick up the seir and he would pick up the blood of the seir and he would put down the blood of the par. V'hiza mimenu ala paroches shekeneged ha'aron mibachutz. He would do the same sprinkling on the paroches that he did with the dam hapar. Achas l'malav shel l'mata v'chule. Now, what have we done so far? Here's what's happened so far within the Kodesh or right near the Kodesh. The Ketores, the dam of the par inside the Kodesh, the dam of the seir inside the Kodesh, and then the dam of the par on the paroches, and then the dam of the seir on the paroches. All of this in rapid form, one happening right after the other, super quick. All of this was happening so quickly. Then 2 lines into the very, very wide lines, ira dam hapar l'socha dam ha-seir. Then he would pour the blood of the par into the container that had the blood of the seir, v'nasan es hamole berekan, and he would stack the jugs because he emptied out the par one into the seir one. Now it's empty. Put the one with the blood in it, with both bloods in it, and he would stack the two together. End of the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, a diuk mishenignaz loktani el mishenitzal tanan. Now we learned about this already, that there's a machlokes in the Gemara. There's a machlokes in the Tanaim. What happened to the Aron? Was it transported to Bavel, or was it buried somewhere in the area of the Mikdash? What was the first word of our Mishnah? Just scan right back up. Mishenitzal ha'aron, from the time the Aron was taken. Says the Gemara, mishenignaz loktani. It doesn't say that it was buried. El mishenital tanan, just that it was taken. This is Keman de Amar Aron Gala leBavel. This is like the shita that says that the Aron was taken out of Yerushalayim and brought to Bavel. The Tanya, the Brisa writes 5 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Aron Gala leBavel shenemar u'letshuvas Hashana shalach hamelech Nebuchadnezzar Iveu Bavela im kli chemdas Beis Hashem. He took the grandest of all of the things from Beis Hashem, the Aron. What could be more chashuv than the Aron? And he took that and he brought it there. Next shita in the Brisa, Reb Shimon ben Yochai agrees. He says Omer Aron Gala leBavel based on another pasuk. Shenemar lo yivaser davar amar Hashem. It's not davar. The davar should be tiber. No. Let's see what it says. Lo yivaser davar amar Hashem. Yes, it is. And they make a diuk in the word davar. Elu aseres hadibros shebo. Where were the aseres hadibros kept? We saw this already once. The Gemara in Bava Kama details all the math in order to ensure pi. Tosfos there in Bava Kama indicates what pi is because the Torah scroll is written on one Eitz Chaim, and they figured out because they knew they figured out because of the diameter. They figured out what the circumference was. Tosfos, there are details, all of that. We'll get there in I don't even know how many years. That's what the Gemara says, is that that's the Aseres HaDibros. So whatever, either way, the Aseres HaDibros were part of the Aron, and that was taken. But Rabbi Yehuda, he disagrees. Omer, Aron b'makomo nignas. That was a shita we saw yesterday. That was a shita we saw. The Yoshiyahu buried the Yeshayahu buried the Aron. Shenemar vayiru roshe habadim min hakodesh. You were able to actually see the ends of the badim al pnei hadavir by the separation of the wall. Vayiru hachutza, it couldn't be seen on the outside. V'yihu shama yom hazeh, and it is still there today. And that machlokes remains. There are full documentaries on this. There are those who say, I presume not correct. There's those who say that the Aron is actually stored in a temple in Ethiopia. And they have this place that no one will go into. It is protected 24/7, and they have a lot of minhagim that look similar to what we do as Orthodox Jews, not identical. There actually are crosses in a lot of their temples, but they have a lot of things. It's kind of like a crossbreed a little bit. So I doubt that it's there based on this Gemara. It's either in Bavel or it is in buried under the tunnel system in our Mikdash. We're going to stop right here at Upliga. Mir Hashem will pick up on Shabbos 1 hour before Mincha. And wishing you all a beautiful night. All too. Thank you.